So here we are on module 3 of the review, and this time our goal is to cover selection and subprograms, although if this video gets to too long, I may split that up into 2 modules. We'll see. I'll make that judgment call halfway through. So this is where we're at right now. We just finished input, so I'm going to comment this out the same way that I did with all the other ones, with the /*, the group comment, and the */. Now, I've been getting questions about documentation from students, whatnot. I'm not going to go over that in here, but I have posted a few support documents on our class website in the review section to help you with that. Make sure you give them a good read because you will be responsible for proper documentation when you submit your projects. Of course you will. So let's start off with selection. Selection basically means making choices. Getting the program to make choices based on some form of data. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, it depends on the type of choice that we want them to make. There are a few options. So first of all, selection. The first option is what we call simple selection. Simple selection is made up of your basic if statement and your if-else statement, which means one choice or 2 choices. Okay? Now, outside of that, there's also multi-selection. Multi-selection is when we have either an if-else if statement or a switch statement. And these let us make 3 or more choices. And that's what they're intended for. But they do so, like they both do the exact same thing, just in different ways. And as a result, we get different results and different efficiencies. So we have to keep track of that. Okay, so let's start with the basic things. Making a choice. The basic if statement. So we'll keep this as nice and simple as possible. Let's create a variable called int time. And let's say this represents the hour of the day based on a 24-hour clock. Okay? So let's say it is, 10 a.m. Int time equals 10 a.m., 10 o'clock. Great. Now let's make a simple choice that says, all right, well, if it's before lunchtime, if it's before noon, then we're going to say it's morning time, a simple output statement. All right. Well, let's create a string. And we're going to say string output. And we're going to assume that it is, evening. And now below here, we're going to write our if statement. So the way these if statements work, it's very simple. If, and then inside the brackets, some type of test condition, some comparison. So in this case, I'm going to say if time is less than 12. So if it's less than lunchtime, I want to change output to be morning. And then we'll display it on the screen. Console.writeLine time of day. So if we look at this, it says start output as evening. If time, which is a value of 10, is less than 12, change the value of output to morning. So let's go through this. Time is currently 10. Is time less than 12? 10 is less than 12. Yes, it is. So it's going to come in here. It's going to execute this, which is going to change output to the value of morning. So in theory, we should get time of day morning. Let's run this. I put time of day. That should be output. My bad. I'm sure some of you caught that while I was doing it. Try again. Time of day, morning. Great. That's awesome. Let's play with this time variable to see how we can change things. Let's change it to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 14. We run it again. Now it says evening. It says evening because it never got into this code. It says if time is less than 12. It replaces time with a 14. Is 14 less than 12? Nope. So it skips over this chunk and just goes right down to the output statement. Doesn't actually get inside. What if I put exactly 12? We run it again. We get evening. Well, that doesn't really make much sense because it's lunchtime. But we got evening because it didn't go into this if statement. All right. So that's one choice. It either goes in or it doesn't, and it just continues on with the rest of the program. Sometimes we may want to create an either or situation. Do this or do that. No choices. You must do one of them. That's what we call an if-else statement. Two choices. Okay? So we're going to say, well, if time is less than 12, then it's morning time. Else, now with else, you do not need any brackets, because what else means is everything else. Whatever you didn't test for, that is going to happen. Okay, so else means everything else. So basically, since we're talking about time here, time represents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way to 14, all the way to 24, sorry, right? So basically that means 12 through 24 is not going to go into here, which means it has to go into here. So we're going to change output to something else. Output is equal to, I don't know, we'll just change it to after morning, just so we can see that it actually got into here. So let's run this again. And here we got after morning, because it wasn't in there. So let's try 24, not 124, 24. And we're still getting after morning. Let's put 1 a.m. Run it. Now we're getting morning. Maybe I want to be a little bit more precise though. Maybe I want to say, well, if it's afternoon, I want to know whether it's evening or night. Well, what defines that? What is evening and what is night? Maybe evening is everywhere from lunchtime up to, I don't know, 7 p.m. And everything after that is nighttime. So 7 p.m. is the same thing as 19. So everything before 7 p.m. is, we're going to consider that evening. So how do I do that? Using only if-else statements. Well, I can do that using something called nesting. Nesting is when we have a control structure, something that changes the control of the program, inside of another control structure. So what I'm going to do is inside of this else, I'm going to write another if-else. I'm going to say, well, I know it's not less than 12, otherwise it would have went into that if statement. So I'm going to write another if statement here that says, well, if time is less than 19, then I want it to change it to evening. Now it already is evening, but that's okay for now. Evening. Output equals evening. Great. But if it's not less than 7, I want to change it to night. Else. So let's follow the logic of this for a second. So let's say we put in 3 p.m., 15 hour 15. So it's going to say, is 15 less than 12? No, it's not. So it's going to go into this else case. It's going to say, is 15 less than 19? Yep. So it's going to set output equal to evening. It's going to jump out past this point down to here, finish this, and then it's going to come into here. It's never going to go into the else case if it goes into the if. It only goes into one of the two. So 15 should output evening. And it does. Let's try 21. So 21 is what, 9 p.m.? 9 p.m., yeah. So when we're talking about this, we're going to say, is 21 less than 12? Nope, it fails. So it's going to go inside of the else case. Is 21 less than 19? Nope, it fails. So it's going to go inside of that else case. And it doesn't have to check anything, it just goes in. It's everything else. So it assigns output to night. And then it's done, it outputs. And we get nighttime. Just to make sure we can still get morning, let's put in 10 a.m. again. So now what it's going to do, it's going to say, is 10 less than 12? Sure is. It's going to go in, set output to morning, go here, and jump over this whole thing all the way down to the output. It doesn't even need to look at it because it went into the if statement. It is only ever going to go into one of them. And we run it, and we get morning time again. So that is simple selection, one or two choices. But you can see we can make many choices with the aid of nesting. Okay? Another thing we can do is we can do something called compound statements. Compound statements are when we make choices based on more than one criteria. So what we can do basically is something like this. We can use special Boolean operators. We can use and, or, and not. In code, we do and with a double ampersand. Or we do with a double vertical bar, which you can find right above your enter key. And not we do with an exclamation mark, if you recall. So those are the different compound operators. And this is how we use those. Whenever we want to say two things need to be true for something to execute, that's an and. And means everything must be true for it to execute. Or means at least one, this or that. This or that. Of course, if they're both true, that's okay as well. In reality, it actually means at least one. At least one needs to be true. And not just gives us the opposite of whatever we have, which is why that while loop worked up there before. So let's take a look at this. We're going to leave this the way it is. Actually, you know what? We're going to change this. We're going to write this as separate if statements. So instead of an if else, we're going to write the exact same code with separate if statements. So I'm just going to comment this out so we don't lose it. So you guys can come back and look at it if you want. We're going to try and achieve the exact same results with separate if statements. So I'm going to say, well, if time is less than 12, we still want to do that part because there's only one possibility for morning. So we're going to say if time is less than 12, we're going to change output to morning. Great. But now I want to do evening. Now what does evening actually mean? Evening means anything before 7 p.m. but after lunchtime. Well, actually after and including lunchtime. So now we're going to write another if statement below this that says if time is greater than or equal to 12. It's greater than or equal to, either one. So if it's greater than 12, that's good. If it's equal to 12, also good. So I want it to be greater than or equal to 12, and I want time to be less than 19. So that satisfies both criteria. It's after lunchtime, including lunch, and it is before 7 p.m. So we can set output equal to evening. And then finally, we want one last statement for our clock. So we're going to say if time is after or including 7 p.m., so greater than or equal to 7 p.m., which is 19, and time is less than or equal to 24. Then in that case, we're going to put nighttime. Great. So now we have three separate if statements. We didn't change the variable, so we got 10 there. So we should still be getting into, choose server changes. I didn't change anything. Resolving differences between your content and server content while you're disconnected. I'm not disconnected. Don't lose my stuff. Choose my changes. I don't know what's going on here, but that's okay. Looks like everything's still going. Let's run it just to make sure. Did we lose anything? I don't think so. Let's run it. Time of day, we still got morning at 10 o'clock. That's great. Now, if we want to add more into that, let's modify that. Let's try 15. 15 is between noon and 7 p.m., so we should get evening. And we do. Great. And now let's try 23, which is 11 p.m. We run this. We should get night, and we do. Let's try 25. 25 is not a valid time, but let's see what we get. We got evening. Why did we get evening? Well, we got evening because output started at evening. Down here, it didn't go in here, it didn't go in here, and it didn't go in here. It actually failed all of them, which means the data never changed, so we still got evening. So it kind of kept like its default value. So that's our simple selection. Multi-selection is basically just more of the same. what multi-selection allows us to do, and we're going to rewrite this code again using multi-selection. Multi-selection allows us to add more than 2 choices. Now we have more than 2 things going on here, but it's actually pretty inefficient the way we wrote it. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment out this piece now. We go down here. Great. And now below here, we're going to do this with multi-selection. We're going to use an if-else-if statement. So an if-else-if statement just says, keep checking, go in order, keep checking all the possible options until you find one that's true. Go in the first one that's true, and then skip the rest. If you don't ever find one, oh well. So let's try this out. If time is less than 12, we're still doing the exact same beginning. We're going to set output equal to morning. Now, instead of doing an else statement or more if statements, we're going to do an else if statement. Else if time is, now we can still use our compound statements if we want, or we could just say else if time is less than 19. And the reason why I don't have to do the compound statement, I could, it would be perfectly valid, is because I know it has to be greater than 12, greater than or equal to 12, otherwise it would have went into this first statement. All right, do you understand that? So if it was less than 12, it would have went in here. It's different from up here where we have 3 if statements because it's going to test those no matter what. They're separate, distinct statements. Up here, it only goes in to check if the less than 12 fails. So this is kind of like that. It only goes in here if the one above it failed. So in here, we're just going to write, well, if it's less than that, we're going to output is equal to evening. Great. And now we have our last option, else if time is less than 24. Less than or equal to 24, I should say, because 24 is a valid number. And then we can output night. Now you can see immediately that our code is a lot smaller and cleaner. If it's less than 12, do that. Otherwise, if it's less than 19, do that. Otherwise, if it's less than or equal to 24, do that. Very simple, very clean. We run our program, and we're still getting evening. Why? It's 25. So it doesn't go into any of these options. So it keeps its default value. We can create a safety net. We can use an else statement, just like we did on the first statements. Else is like our safety net. It basically means if you don't get into anything above, go into this one. Remember, it says everything else. So what do I want to do with this? I'm going to say, you know what? That's an invalid time. Output is equal to invalid time. Invalid time. So now if we run it, we actually get invalid time because we put 25 in there. Of course, we're not checking the lower bound either. We're not checking to see whether it's less than or equal to 0. So that would be something we would have to do as a compound statement right here. But this is the way if-else-if statements work. So let's try something. Let's put in a valid one, let's say 23. So the way this logic works, it's going to check them one at a time from top to bottom. Is 23 less than 12? Nope. Check the next one. Is 23 less than 19? Nope. Check the next one. Is 23 less than or equal to 24? Sure is. Go on in and assign night to output. And we get our answer. Because as soon as it's done this, it skips over the rest of the giant if statement and does the output. Similarly speaking, if it goes into the first one here, let's say we change this to, I don't know, a 7. It's going to say, is 7 less than 12? Yep, sure is. Goes in, changes output to morning, and then jumps out and over and past everything else. It only ever executes the first one that's true, even if there's more than one that's true. Even if there's more than one that's true. Because if you think about this, if I put in 7, well, 7 is less than 12. It's also less than 19. It's also less than or equal to 24. It went into the first one that was true and then jumped over the rest. Okay, so that's our multi-selection for this stuff. And it works like when we were talking about hard disks and stuff like that back in grade 11, it scans through all the options until it finds the place that it needs to be. Then it stops. All right, switch gears for a second for the switch statement. Now, the switch statement has some pros and cons. The main pro is that it is ridiculously super fast. By that, I mean it is what we call constant time. It's perfect. It's instantaneous. It basically has what's called a lookup table, kind of like a table of contents, just like RAM. And with a snap of the fingers, it instantly goes to the proper case that has the data that we're looking for. The problem is that it can only check equality. It can only check exactly equal to. So what that means is I could check for exactly 12 or exactly 19 or exactly 24, and that's fine. But I can't do ranges. I can't say less than or equal to 12, less than or equal to 19. That's just not allowed. So I could do something like this. Switch time, open and close my brackets, and then for each possibility, I write a case statement. Case, and then some value that I'm checking for. So maybe I'm checking for key times of the day. So let's say when it's 12 o'clock, I want to change output equal to noon. Great. And alternatively, when I'm done that, I need a break statement. I'll come back to that in a second. Now let's also check, let's say 6 p.m., which is 18. And then, why is this not unindenting? That's weird. Okay, that's REPL. And then I'm going to say output is equal to dinner. Fine. And then maybe there's one more. Let's say 10 p.m., which is 22. And then for here, we're going to say output is equal to bedtime. Okay. Why is that there? And we need our break statement. Now we're going to leave it like that. Now in theory, if we put in any of these times, it should set the value of output to that. It'll even overwrite whatever we did up here. So if I put in 12, here it's going to set it to evening because 12 is less than or equal to 19, or less than 19, but not less than 12. But it's going to get into here after that because our code runs from top to bottom and change it to noon. And we got morning because we have a value of 7 in there right now. So 7 comes in here, sets output to morning, skips over the rest of this, comes down to the switch statement, doesn't get into any of our cases, so it gets ignored, and then it gets output as noon. Let's change this to 12 just to verify this. So we should get noon this time. And we do. Even though it got overwritten to evening here, down here, we overrode it to noon right here. Okay? Now, just like we have an else case for our if-else if statements, we can actually have something similar, a safety net for our switch statements. We can have like, it's called a default case. So default. You don't need to check a value for it because it just means everything else, just like an else statement does. And in this case, we're going to say output equal unimportant time. Okay, and we're going to run our program. Oh, I forgot my break statement. We run this, and there we go. We're getting noon because it's still set to 12. Let's set it to 10. Let's see what happens. Now we know that it should get into here and set it to morning. But then the switch statement is going to execute, and we're going to get unimportant time. Because it didn't go into 12, 18, 22, it went into the default case, which is unimportant time. Now, did it check 12, 18, and 22? It didn't. It did not check it. Remember, it's got that kind of table of contents, and it just jumps to the right one. If there isn't a right one, it immediately goes to the default case. It's instantaneous. Direct access, basically, just like RAM. Okay? Now, what if I actually wanted to use a switch statement, but I wanted to get a range of data? You can do it. It's just super duper tedious. So for example, if I wanted to change this thing to morning again, and I wanted all the hours between 6 a.m. and noon, so then what I could say is, I could say case 6, and then I would have to say output equals morning, blah, 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 break, and repeat this for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And this is going to get pretty tedious, right? And we continue that. And that's going to get boring and painful. There's a shortcut. The shortcut is this. We can actually just go like this and copy this one. Really? We got 7, 8, 9, 10, and then case 11. So this is what's happening. First of all, why do we have this break statement? This break statement makes it act just like the if-else if statement. So basically, it changes output to morning, and break breaks out of the switch statement and skips everything else. That's why the break exists. If we don't have the break, like these things up here, let's say we put in the value 7 again. What happens down in this switch statement, it says, ooh, I'm a 7. So it goes in here, executes any code in here. In this case, there's none. Normally, we would have a break statement, which would say, get out of the switch statement, but we don't this time. We don't at all. So it's going to do a fall through. It's going to automatically fall into the case 8. Which doesn't have anything either. So it's going to fall through and fall through and fall through and fall through and fall through one more time and change output to morning. Finally, we get a break, so it gets out. So we should have morning. Just like I could change this to Bob, or if we wanted, we'll get Bob. So that is how that switch statement works. Okay. So that's all of our selection, and that took about 27 minutes, so I'm actually going to stop it there so I don't have too long of a video, and we'll have a separate one for subprograms.